العلم أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدمه. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. أما بعد. Sorry about the lateness. طيب، ومن شروطها ستر العورة بثوب مباح لا يصف البشرة. The Shaykh rahmatullah alayhi carries on to talk about the conditions of the Salah. From the conditions of the Salah, we've taken 4 or 5. 2 in Kitab al-Tahara and 1 Dukhul al-Waqt at the beginning of Kitab al-Salah. The Shaykh is going to mention the remainder of the shurut for the Salah for this lesson, inshallah. So hopefully we'll complete the conditions in this class, and then in the next lesson we'll go into Sifatul Salah. The Shaykh says, وَمِن شُرُوطِهَا سَتْرُ الْعَوْرَةِ بِثَوْبٍ مُبَاحٍ لَا يَصِفُ الْبَشَرَ وَالْعَوْرَةُ 3 أنواع مغلظة وهي عورة المرأة الحرة البالغة إلى آخر. The next condition that the Shaykh is talking about is سَتْرُ الْعَوْرَةِ, or covering of the awrah. The word covering of the awrah, or satr al-awrah, is something that is mentioned in the books of the fuqaha, and it's something that people are used to talking about on their tongues. Like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about covering or taking adornments in the salah, Allah says, خُذُوا زِينَتَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ مَسْجِدٍ. Take your adornments, يعني beautify yourself عند كل مسجد أي لكل صلاة. And beautifying yourself is much more general than satr al-awrah, than covering your awrah. The covering of the awrah is the bare necessity. The covering of the awrah is the bare necessity for a person's salah to be correct. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the believers to take their adornments when they're praying, to beautify themselves when they're praying. And why not? Since the servant is going to be standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a person is going to an interview or going into induction, they'll make sure they wear a decent set of clothes. So likewise, when a person is praying, they need to make sure that they set a certain standard, that they're going to be standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they need to beautify themselves. Satr al-awrah. Also, when we're talking about the awrah, there are 3 types of awrah that need to be preserved, and each one takes a different ruling. And getting these 3 awras mixed up can cause confusion. The first one is al-awratu fi salah, or awratu salah. The first one is awratu salah, the awrah of the salah. The second one is awratu nazar, the awrah of looking or seeing. The third one is awratul makhtuba, or the awrah of the pre-nikah, when a person wants to marry. Both people, the woman and the man, they're both allowed to look at certain parts of the body of the fiancé or the other person that they wish to get married to. That awrah also has its own requirements. Makhtuba. The one that the Shaykh is discussing in this one is awratu salah, or al-awratu fi salah. Understandably so, since we're in the chapter Kitab al-Salah. If time permits, we'll talk briefly about the other 2 as well. So the awrah of the salah, the Shaykh is going to mention that it's of 3 types. Firstly, the Shaykh says satr al-awrah bi-thawbin, The first condition is that a person, or the conditions for covering the awrah, is that it has to be with a thobe, a garment. Now that thobe, the Shaykh says, mubah, a thobe which is permissible to wear. We discussed this when we were talking about al-wudu. We were talking about the water that a person may perform wudu with. And we said that many of the fuqaha, they say that the salah is invalid if a person makes wudu with water that is stolen. And we said there's two opinions. Likewise is the case here. So when the Shaykh says mubah, it has to be mubah, as in it cannot be stolen. It has to belong to the person. Also, it can't be a garment which is silk for the man, because men are prohibited from wearing silk. Or it can't be musbil. Isbal, meaning for the men, their ankle, or the garment has to be above the ankle. Or it can't be a thobe that is tashabbuh bin nisa or tashabbuh bin rijal. So the man cannot wear thiyab or garments that resemble the garments or the clothing of the women. And the women cannot wear clothing or garments that resemble the clothing of the men. So the Shaykh mentions that it is a condition, that it has to be mubah. There's another opinion in this mas'ala, which is that the salah is correct, the salah that a person prays in a haram thobe, the salah is correct, like the person will be sinning, or the person is sinning. And the reason is because the tahrim, or what has been made haram, isn't specific to salah. So you won't find the hadith in which the Messenger ﷺ said, "O men, do not pray the salah with silk garments." Sah? Or you will not find the hadith in which the Messenger ﷺ prohibited us from making wudu or wearing clothes which are stolen for salah. Rather, we find that stealing is haram 24/7. In the Sharia, it's haram to steal. Whether you're in salah or not, whether you're making wudu or not. طيب. It's quite important that you understand that, because at the end of the chapter, towards the end of the class, we're going to see something else which is similar to this, like in the ruling is different. So the reason why the salah is correct, like in the person is sinning, for example, the man that prays in a silk garment, the reason why the salah is correct is because there isn't a hadith that states that it's impermissible to wear silk, for the man, in the salah. The tahrim or the nahi is not khas or specific for the salah, rather it's in general. Understand that as it is now, inshallah. If you don't understand it, you can ask a question now. Because at the end of the chapter, we're going to see a mas'ala which is similar to this, lakin the ruling is different. طيب. في ثوب مباح. We've understood that. لا يصف البشرة. لا يصف البشرة. The garment that the Shaykh mentioned, it has to be a garment which is permissible to use. It cannot be see-through. It cannot be see-through. Nor can it be tight to the extent where it reveals the shape of the person, as if if it's too tight. طيب. That's with regards to the garment itself. So for the men, and the women, they have to wear a garment which is permissible, which doesn't show any parts of the body. طيب. As for what is specific to men, women and young people, young children, the Shaykh is about to go into it now. وَالْعَوْرَةُ ثَلَاثَةُ أَنْوَاعٍ. Awra is of three types. Awra is of three types. من باب الفائدة, just as a side benefit. At the beginning of the lesson we said that awra is of three types. عورة النظر, عورة الصلاة, and عورة المخطوبة. صح؟ طيب. Now we're going to look at that awra, the same awra, لكن from another aspect, from another angle. That is called taqsim. That is called a taqsim. And it's something which you will find in ilm usul al-fiqh. For example, when we talk about wajib, we can talk about wajib from various different angles. We can talk about wajib as in the time that you're meant to perform the wajib. We can talk about wajib in terms of the obligation of it. So it's the same ruling, like you're talking about different angles. So the awra is the same awra, but you're coming from different angles. Just like now, in this room there are about 35 people. Now if we were to say, everyone who's got a hat on, stand there. Everyone who hasn't got a hat on, stand there. And everyone who has got qutra or shimar on, stand over there. We're probably going to get about 3 different groups. Some of you are wearing hats, some of you are not wearing hats, and some of you are wearing qutra. Sah? How many groups? 3. The same set of groups. It's the same amount of people. طيب. If I was to say, whoever came by public transport, stand over there. Whoever came by car, stand over there. We're probably going to get 2 groups. Like in the students or the people that you're dividing are the same amount of people that you divided when you was talking about the qudra and the hat and so on. So the awra now, we're looking at it from a different angle. And that angle is in terms of if it's a man, if it's a woman, or if it's a small child. طيب. والعورة ثلاثة أنواع. مغلظة. عورة مغلظة. The awra which is strong. Or the highest type of awra. وهي عورة المرأة الحرة البالغة. And this is the awra of the woman who is free, يعني not a slave, البالغة, that has reached age, that has passed puberty, reached puberty. So the highest form of awra, with regards to covering it, is the awra of the woman. The woman who is free, who is of age. فَجَمِيعُ بَدَنِهَا, all of her body, عَوْرَةٌ فِي الصَّلَاةِ, all of her body is awra in the salah. إِلَّا وَجْهَهَا, except for her face. So the Shaykh says, rahmatullahi alayhi, that the whole body of the woman is awra in the salah, except for her hands, and her face. The Shaykh says, إِلَّا وَجْهَهَا. The Shaykh says, except for her face. The hands and feet we shall go into. So the first type of awra is the awra of the woman, and her awra in salah, according to the Shaykh rahmatullahi alayhi, is her whole body.
Why does Why does he mention free woman?
A free woman. طيب, he mentions a free woman because the awrah of the woman who is a servant is different. طيب. فجميع بدنها عورة. Her whole body is a awrah. إلا وجهها, except for her face. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا يقبل الله صلاة حائل إلا بخمار. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not accept the salah of a ha'id, يعني a woman who has reached age. Ha'id huna in this hadith means a woman who has reached age. إلا بخمار, except for a khimar, covering her awrah. Also, there's ijma', consensus, that the woman must cover her whole body in the salah, that her whole body is a awrah in the salah except for the face. Except for the face. طيب. As for her hands and feet, there is a khilaf. There is a khilaf amongst the fuqaha as to whether her hands and her feet are awrah. And the stronger opinion, Allahu A'lam, is that her hands and her feet are not awrah in the salah. That her hands and her feet are not awrah in the salah. And that's the madhab of the Shafi'iyya, Malikiyya, some of the Hanabila as well. Because there isn't a hadith mentioning that the women should cover their hands or their feet in the salah. And Shaykh al-Islam rahmatullahi alayhi mentions that the women during the time of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they used to wear dir'a. Dir'a is called, or qamis. Dir'a is Arabic. And their state was in general that they were poor, so they may not find anything to cover their feet with. So that's the awrah of the woman in the salah. Her whole body minus the face and the hands. And with regards to the feet, likewise as well. Some fuqaha say the bottom of her feet are not awrah, like in the top of her feet are awrah. Ala kulli hal, yarhamkallah, it's befitting for the person who wants to pray, for the woman who wants to pray, to take her adornment. Why? Because we have a verse which is clear in saying that, or in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the believers to take their adornments in salah. Lakin the face is haram for her to cover, except if there are ajanib, if there are men around. In which case, if she does wear the niqab, and there are men around, she should cover her face. Lakin when she does go down for sujood, to take the niqab off, or pull it up. Because obviously when she's in sujood, no one can see. And the intent is that her forehead and her nose touch the floor. طيب. That's the awrah of the woman. And it's the strongest type of awrah. وعورة مخففة, the Shaykh says. وهي, and the second one is like a lesser or the least awrah, or the weakest type of awrah. And it is the awrah of Ibn Sab'i Sinin ila Ashrin, the boy who is from the age of 7 to 10. فَإِنَّهَا الْفَرْجَانِ, for verily it is, the Shaykh says, the two private parts. So the young boy from the age of 7 to the age of 10 who has reached tamyiz, he is mature, he knows he has to pray, his awrah is the two private parts. طيب. Even though the awra is the two private parts, lakin, in reality, his parents should give him tarbiyah and command him to wear complete clothing, so that they get used to it. وعورة متوسطة, and an awra which is medium, medium. وهي عورة من عداهم, and it is the awra of anyone other than them. So the first one the Shaykh says it's the awra of the woman. The second one the awra of who? The 7 to 10. In the third one the Shaykh says من عداهم. The medium awra is for the one who is other than these two, such as who? Boys 11 and older. Men. Sah. The men and the boys who are older than 10, lakin they have not reached puberty. And the abd, the servant, the male and the female, ala kulli hal. Lakin that's not very important at the moment. So this awra, the awra of the men in the salah, is min as-surati ila rukbah. The awra of the salah, of the man in the salah, is min as-surati ila rukbah, from the navel to the knees. And again, that is the bare necessity, or the bare minimum that a man has to cover in the salah, whilst also covering both of his shoulders or one of his shoulders. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in authentic hadith said, لا يصلي أحدكم في ثوب الواحد ليس على عاتقيه فيه شيء or منه شيء. Let one of you not pray with, or let one of you pray with one thobe, or not pray with one thobe, ليس على عاتقيه شيء, while it's not having anything on his shoulders. Then they are excused. Lakin more often than not, the believer finds something to wear. Even in ihram, even when a person is performing ihram, the men wear a garment on the bottom half, and another garment to cover their shoulders. What some people do is they take the top garment off and put it down on the floor and pray without a top on. And it's not befitting for a person to pray like that. Not only has he opposed this hadith, lakin he has opposed the ayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا خُذُوا يَا بَنِي آدَمَ خُذُوا زِينَتَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ مَسْجِدٍ. Take your adornments at every masjid, يعني every salah. Just like a person wouldn't greet people or even open the door without a shirt, then likewise, when you're in salah, you shouldn't be praying as if you're not standing in front of anyone that's important. You're standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So under the verse, خُذُوا زِينَتَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ مَسْجِدٍ, it means that a person beautifies themselves, even puts on adar, uses the miswak. لولا أن أشق على أمتي لأمرتهم بالسواك عند كل صلاة, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. If it wasn't the fact that it would be difficult upon my ummah, I would have commanded them to use the miswak for every salah. In another hadith, عند كل wudu. Nah. So when a person is praying these ibadat, he has to make sure that he prays in his best state. Like in these things that we're mentioning, or these limits, they're the bare necessity which by, if anyone comes underneath them or beneath them, then a person's salah will not be accepted from him or her. طيب. That is the awra of the salah. That is the awra of the salah. For the women, the whole body minus the face and the hands, and the feet according to some fuqaha. The young child, the young boy, the two private parts. Lakin, it's up to his parents or his guardian to raise him upon taking his adornments in general, so that they get used to it. Likewise, the men, and anyone other than women and other than the child or the young boy. Also, the young girl, her awrah would also be the same awrah as the man, from the navel to the knee. From the navel to the knee. طيب, that's the awrah fi salah. Awrah to nadar, for the men, from the navel to the knees. طيب. For the women, the whole body. The woman, the whole of her body is a awrah. And there is a khilaf from the time of companions until now between Ahl Sunnah with regards to the niqab and the hands. Lakin excluding that, then the whole body of the woman is a awrah. طيب. As for the third type of awrah, which was what? Awrah pre-nikah. This is what, or the awrah of the makhtuba is what a man is allowed to see from the woman before he gets married to her. And on vice versa as well, what the woman is allowed to see from the man before she gets married to him. Firstly, seeing the person before getting married is from the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He commanded one of the companions who wanted to get married to look at the woman that he wanted to get married to, because that is more of a reason, or it becomes more of a reason for him to marry her, and for the love to remain between them, the love and the compassion to remain between them. So it's a sunnah. Tab'an, it's not wajib. Likewise, it's a sunnah for both the male and the female. As for the woman, what is she allowed to see from the man? She's allowed to see whatever it is that appears from him whenever he's walking, for example. The head, the hands, the feet, the legs, under the knee. And just under the knee. طيب, so she's allowed to see that. As for the man, what he's allowed to see is the face, the head, the hands, and the feet. The face, the head, the hands, and the feet. And that's obviously without khalwa. And also they can look more than once if they wish to. If they haven't made their mind up first time, second time, they can do so again. Lakin it's haram for the woman to beautify herself for the khatib. Because firstly it's misleading. Secondly, if she does put makeup on and he does get married to her based upon her look whilst having makeup on, later on, if he does see, or when he does get married to her and he sees someone that's completely different come into his house, that may be a reason for a rift arising between the two. Likewise, she's not allowed to beautify herself for him because he's not her husband, as we know. women are allowed to well, it's wajib for them to beautify themselves for their husbands. Just like it's wajib for the husbands to beautify themselves for their wives, as Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu used to do. Lakin the fiancé or the person that intends to marry the woman, at that particular moment he's not her husband, so it's haram for her to beautify herself for him. Wallahu a'lam. That's with regards to the awra, satr al-awra, and that is from the conditions of the salah. The Shaykh is now going to move on to the next condition, istiqbal al-qibla, facing the qibla. قال تعالى ومن حيث خرجت فولي وجهك شطر المسجد الحرام فإن عجز عن استقبالها لمرض أو غيره سقط كما تسقط جميع الواجبات بالعجز عنها. قال تعالى فاتقوا الله ما استطعتم. وكان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي في السفر النافلة على راحلته حيث توجهت به. طيب. The second or the next condition that the Shaykh rahmatullah alayhi mentions is facing the qibla. And the evidence for this is the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and wherever you are or wherever you start forth, turn your face towards the Masjid al-Haram. And it is the Kaaba that we're meant to face. So if a person is in the masjid, in the haram, in the actual haram, they should face the Kaaba. They need to face that Kaaba. طيب. If they're in the masjid but they can't see the Kaaba, you will find that the masjid or the marble on the floor, the tiles on the floor are all facing the Kaaba. Inshallah, when you go there, if you can see the Kaaba, face the Kaaba, whichever direction it is. Like if you happen to be in Safa or Marwa, or you happen to be on the first floor, second floor, where you can't see the Kaaba, the tiles are facing the Kaaba. So whichever way the tiles are facing, face that way. طيب. That's for the person who is in the masjid.
This is different from actually looking at it in the salah.
No, that's different. Like, I'm talking about facing the actual Kaaba with your whole body. طيب. As for if a person is in Mecca, then they need to face the Masjid al-Haram. Why? Because the Masjid al-Haram, in it is what? The Kaaba. So by facing Masjid al-Haram, you are automatically facing the Kaaba. طيب. As for those people who are not in Mecca, they need to face the jihah, the direction of the Kaaba. As the Messenger ﷺ said, ما بين المشرق والمغرب بين المشرق والمغرب قبلة. Whatever is between the east and the west is a qibla, meaning the jihah or the direction. So for example, if you're facing southeast, our qibla is what? That way, directly, صح? طيب. If you face that way slightly, يمشي عادي, it's normal. Because you're still facing the direction, the jihah. It's not like you're in front of the Kaaba. And the further you move away from the Kaaba, the wider the what? The qibla or the jihah becomes. So if you're in the masjid, it's طيق, يعني. It's just that cubicle, it's just the Kaaba. The further you go out, the wider the direction or the jihah of the Kaaba becomes. طيب. So it's wajib to face the qibla. The Shaykh rahmatullah alayhi says, فإن عجز عن استقبالها فإن عجز عن استقبالها. Firstly, it's wajib for the person to find out exactly where the qibla is. You can do so by asking someone, or using an app or using a compass to find out exactly where the qibla is. If you do so, or you do not know where the qibla is, and you make ijtihad, for example, how can you make ijtihad? When you're in this hall, you're facing that way, sah? If you're in a hall or in a room upstairs, and you don't know where the qibla is in that room, when you make ijtihad, where is your ijtihad going to direct you towards? Roughly towards that way. Roughly towards the same sort of direction. So if you happen to do ijtihad, see where the qibla is, and then you find out that you was facing other than the qibla, you do not need to repeat your salah. In an authentic hadith, the Messenger, some of the companions were out on a journey on a very dark night. And then they had ikhtilaf between them, or different between them in terms of where the qibla was. So each one of them prayed towards the way that he thought the qibla was. He couldn't pray with the other one because he believes the other one isn't facing the qibla. So they prayed, each one according to wherever he felt or believed the qibla was. Then when they came back to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and informed him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not command them to repeat the salah. So that is the mahallu shahid, or wajhul istidlal, that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not command them to repeat the salah. طيب. If a person isn't able to face the qibla, they know where the qibla is. The first one didn't know where the qibla is. If a person knows where the qibla is, lakin they're not able to face the qibla due to an illness, due to being paralyzed, or any other type of illness which prevents the person from facing the qibla, then the qibla, with regards to him, this specific individual, it's waved off. So he doesn't have to face the qibla. And the evidence for this is what? فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ فَلَا وَاجِبَ مَعَ الْعَجْزِ. We mentioned that principle on several occasions. لا واجب مع العجز. There is no wajib with ajz. When a person isn't able to do a certain ibadah, then it's not wajib upon them. لا واجب مع العجز. For example, the man who fell into nikah during Ramadan, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded him to free a slave, or fast 2 months in a row, or feed 60 people. He wasn't able to do either of these three. Then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him something to feed his family with. So the wajib fell upon him. It was waived. So if a person is tied up or imprisoned, or they're in Salatul Khawf, then they do not have to face the qibla. They should try their best in facing the qibla. Lakin if they do not face the qibla, if they are not able to face the qibla, then they do not have to do so. طيب. وكان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي في السفر النافلة على راحلته. The Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم, when he was on a journey, the Shaykh now is about to mention another mas'ala in which you don't have to face the qibla. And he mentions the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, in which he said that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he was ever on a journey and he was on his rahila, yani he was on his camel, ala rahilati haythu, or he would pray haythu tawajjahat ilayhi, he would pray whichever direction his rahila or his camel would face. Lakin another narration في لفظ غير أنه لا يصلي المكتوبة, except that he does not pray the maktuba, the salah which is wajib. So it is the salah which is a nafila, the sunnah salah. It has to be a salah which is sunnah, and he has to be on a journey. Sunnah salah, and they have to be on a journey. This includes a car, coach, train, plane, whatever means of transportation a person uses. If they are traveling and they are praying salah which is a nafila, then they are allowed to do so without facing the qibla. Some fuqaha say if the person faces the qibla initially and then carries on his salah, even if it waves off, even if he's moved off from the qibla, then it's better. Like if a person cannot face the qibla for whatever reason, then they are allowed to do so. It has to be musafir. كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي في السفر. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم used to. So that's a qaid. That's a restriction to when a person is traveling. When he's traveling, naam. When he's outside the city and he's traveling. When he's outside the city and he is traveling. طيب. Questions after, inshallah. When a person is traveling, they're allowed to pray their sunnah on whatever means of transportation that they are on. This shows the amount or the dedication that the Messenger ﷺ gave in with regards to us performing ibadah at any given time. So if a person is on a long journey, if he's in a car, maybe he can stop at a service station. Like if he's on a train or a coach or a plane, then he may not find it easy to find somewhere to pray or face the qibla. And the time of witr may be finishing, or the time of Salatul Duha might have finished, or might be close to ending. And if a person implements this sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ, he has not only implemented the sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ, lakin he has also performed ibadah. Naam. That's with regards to facing the qibla. ومن شروطها, the Shaykh mentions the last one, ومن شروطها النية. The intention is the final shart condition that the Shaykh mentions in Kitab al-Salah. How many conditions have we taken so far? How many? 2 in Kitab al-Tahara, دخول الوقت, ستر العورة, and النية. 5, صح? What's missing? How many were there in Shurut Salah? 9. What's missing? Al-Islam, wal-Aql, wal-Tamyiz. That's 3, صح? 8. What's the other one that's missing? Huh? لا. We took 2 in Kitab al-Tahara, دخول الوقت, إزالة النجاسة, رفع الحدث. إزالة النجاسة, رفع الحدث. حدث. دخول الوقت, we took this week, صح? Or last week. ستر العورة, النية, استقبال القبلة. 6. So we've taken 6 so far in this book. طبعا the Shaykh doesn't mention Islam والعقل والتمييز. Why is that? لا, Islam والعقل Islam والعقل والتمييز, نعم. Why is that? Because it's conditioned for every ibadah. They are conditioned for every ibadah, not specific to as-Salah. طيب. The intention, طبعا the evidence for is إنما الأعمال بالنيات. طيب. When we're talking about the niyyah, it's of 2 types or 3 types. The first intention is the intention that differentiates between different ibadat. The intention that differentiates between different types of ibadat. For example, Salatul Dhuhr and Asr. Salatul Dhuhr and Asr. Exactly the same. 4 rak'at, 2 rak'at, then a tashahud, then 2 rak'at, then taslim. Exactly the same. They can also be prayed at the same time. Like in the one that differentiates between these different ibadat is the intention. Tahiyyat al-Masjid, the salah for when a person wants to greet the masjid or come into the masjid and sit down, and Ratibat or the sunnah for the salah, 2 different ibadat. Both 2 rak'at. How can we differentiate between the 2? With the intention. So a person needs to have the correct intention for whichever ibadah he is praying. So for example, if a person stands at the time of Asr intending to pray Dhuhr, like in they pray Asr, then their salah is invalid. They haven't prayed Dhuhr. For example, a person wants to pray Dhuhr. It's 12:30. It's time for Dhuhr. Like in they think it's time for Asr, or they think they are praying Asr. What should they do? They need to repeat that salah again, because he had the intention of Al-Asr and not the intention of Dhuhr. Likewise, if a person happens to be in the masjid and they are in the salah, for example, they come into Salat al-Isha. They come into Salat al-Isha, the Imam is about to pray Isha, like they think they're running late. So they think the prayer that they're praying is Salatul Tarawih. And then only when the Imam, after two rak'at, says Assalamu alaikum salam, they realize that the Imam was praying Tarawih. Like they had the intention praying for what? La, Tarawih. They had the intention for Tarawih. They can't say, oh yallah, I'm going to carry on praying Isha. There's a difference between that and praying Isha with the intention of Isha behind an Imam who is praying Tarawih. For example, if you're running late, if you've missed Isha, and you come in the masjid in his first 2 rak'at of Tarawih, you can start the salah with the Imam with the intention of what? Isha. He's praying what? Salat Tarawih. Once he finishes his 2 rak'at, he says Assalamu alaikum salam rahmatullah, you stand up and finish 2 rak'at, you finish your Salat al-Isha. You're allowed to do that, it's permissible. In general, it's permissible for the Imam and the Musalli, the Ma'mum, to have different intentions. What's the evidence for this? For the Imam and the person praying behind the Imam to have different intentions, to be praying completely 2 different salats. صح أحسنت. حديث أنس رضي الله عنه. Anas رضي الله عنه, he used to pray with the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم. لا, معاذ رضي الله عنه used to pray with the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم, and he would go back and lead his people in the prayer. He would lead his people in the prayer, يعني Isha for them. When Mu'az praying with the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what salah is he praying? Isha. When he goes back to his people and he's leading them in Isha, what intention has he got? Nafila. What intention have they got? Isha. He's got a salah which is nafila, and they've got an intention for a salah which is farida. as-Salah which is wajib. So they had different intentions. طيب. Hopefully we'll see inshallah. We're in Kitab al-Salah. These masail are going to come anyway. طيب. So the first type of intention, or the first mas'ala with regards to the intention is al-farq or at-tafriq bayn al-ibadat. At-tafriq bayn al-ibadat. The second type is at-tafriq bayn al-ibadat wal-adat. At-tafriq, or differentiating between ibadat and adat, things that we do as a customers in our day-to-day lives, things that are the norm. طيب. For example, ghusl is the most apparent one. If a person needs ghusl janaba, they need ghusl janaba. They need to have the intention of making this ghusl لرفع الجنابة, to remove the impurity of the janaba. Like if a person wakes up upon janaba and they need to perform ghusl, and it's also a hot day, so when it gets to about 11:30, 12 o'clock, they just so happen to walk past the lake and they want to take a dip in the lake just to refresh and cool down. To refresh and to freshen up and to cool down. Then they go into the lake, take a swim, so on, whatever, and then they come out. Upon drying themselves, they remember that subhanallah, I was on janaba. Can he say, yalla, I've had a bath anyway? La. Why is that? He didn't have the intention for performing ghusl. And ghusl is a type of ibadah. A ghusl in janaba is a type of ibadah. So you need to have, it needs to be different to your adah. Your adah, which is what? Cooling down or freshening up. Likewise, fasting. If a person is so busy, they wake up, they're so busy they don't get time to eat, and then when it gets to about 2 o'clock they think, hold on, I haven't eaten anything. Or even when it gets to 12 o'clock, since I haven't had breakfast and I haven't had lunch, yalla, let me fast for the remainder of the day. Taban, it's going to be in December because iftar is what, 4 something, only 3-4 hours. With that sort of person, what were they missing? The intention. Or someone who wants to have a diet, go on a diet. They want to stop, or they want to go on a diet. Therefore, towards the end of the day, they thought, hold on. Or even at iftar time, they thought, let me just break my fast. I was fasting anyway. A person cannot do that. Sahih, if it's a fasting which is a nafilah, they can make the intention from there onwards. They can't say, because I was fasting all day, I might as well just carry on now. Because the intention has to be different. Likewise, even the adat. If a person is eating just because he's hungry, they're not sinning, are they? They're not being rewarded. If a person is eating or sleeping in order to strengthen themselves and have the ability to stand for the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they shall be rewarded for their eating and their drinking and their sleeping. That's why the scholars say the adat of Ahl al-Ilm are ibadat. The adat Ahl al-Ilm ibadah. The adah of Ahl al-Ilm ibadah. What does that mean? The things that Ahlul Ilm do for the norm, and anyone who's a student of knowledge who knows how to come with the correct intention, their adah becomes an ibadah. How? Because in the night when they're sleeping, they sleep in order to wake up for Salat al-Fajr, in order to wake up for Qiyam al-Layl, so that they have the ability to stand in Salat al-Fajr or the ability to pray Qiyam al-Layl. So they'll be rewarded for their sleep. Likewise, if a person wants to perform, and if a person is busy and they want to eat in order to be able to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order to have the ability to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they're eating and they're drinking, they'll be rewarded for it. Likewise, if a person is working, عادة, a person going to work, or a person going to uni, or a person going to college, عادة. Like if a person is going to work with the intention of feeding himself and his family, who it's wajib for him to provide for, then it becomes what? Ibadah. طيب. What did we say? What did we say? عبادات. لا, عادات أهل العلم عبادات, صح؟ وعبادة أهل الغفلة عادة. وعبادة أهل الغفلة عادة. As for the ibadah, the worship of al-ghafla, the people who are heedless, who do not have the correct intention, who just do things for the sake of it, who just pray for the sake of it, perform wudu just for the sake of it, then it becomes a aada for them. Their salah becomes a aada, let alone the other things, like in their salah, their wudu, it becomes a aada for them. Because they only perform it because people are performing it. I'm going to the masjid and then I'm going to pray with the people. Or just performing wudu for the sake of it. So a person, especially the student of knowledge, should always maintain his intention, preserve his intention, look after his intention, and for any little thing that they're doing, they need to have the correct intention and have husn dhan billahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah Jalla wa ala will reward them for what they are doing. Even when a person is using social media, that can be a form of ibadah. When a person is using social media, that can be a form of ibadah. For calling the people to the good, enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, it's ibadah. And social media is a form of al-amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. So if a person is refuting someone from Ahl Bid'ah on social media, that is definitely a type of ibadah, a type of jihad fi sabilillah. That's why it's important for the person to constantly be mindful of everything that he is doing. And the ahkam in general, ahkam are not mujarrad, it's not dry ahkam. There has to be a connection between yourself, your heart and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why having khushu' in salah is so important. Having khushu' in salah is very important. Because the believer is not someone who just does things, rituals, just for the sake of it, where it becomes a aada. Allah Jalla wa ala, when He says, Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar, that the salah prevents a person from doing fahsha and munkar. It's not the salah where a person just prays 5 minutes like a munafiq and then carries on with their day-to-day duties. La. It's the salah that a person completes the conditions, the pillars and the sunan and the wajibat, and the person has khushu' and they know why they're praying and they know to who are they praying. So when you're seeking knowledge, do not seek knowledge just for knowing ahkam, halal, haram, mubah, sunnah, la haram, mustahab, la. That is half of the responsibility. The other half is actually implementing it and having a connection and a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب, that's the second mas'ala in the niyyah. The third mas'ala in the niyyah is al-ikhlas. Al-ikhlas, the third issue, is discussed in the kutub al-aqeedah, kutub al-tawheed. وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. طيب, وتصح الصلاة في كل موضع. The Sheikh now is moving on to where a person is allowed to pray and where they're not allowed to pray. وتصح الصلاة في كل موضع إلا. So that's a قاعدة. وتصح الصلاة في كل موضع. That is the general قاعدة. That a person is allowed to pray everywhere. A person is allowed to pray everywhere. The يعني in authentic hadith وجعلت لي الأرض مسجدا. The ard has been made a masjid for me. The ard has been made a masjid for me. طيب, so that's the first قاعدة. وتصح الصلاة في كل موضع. Regardless of where the person is. Regardless of where a person is. So anywhere that they find themselves that they need to pray, they should pray. Whether they're in a park, whether they're in a playground, whether they're in an institute, in a building, wherever, they need to pray. Except for the things that are about to be mentioned. إلا في محل النجس أو مغصوب أو في مقبرة أو حمام. طيب, except for the mahal which is najis, a place which is najis, a place which is filthy, such as the toilets, akramakumullah, or a place which is for garbage. In that sort of place, then a person cannot pray. Where a person cannot pray. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says وَعَهِدْنَا إِلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْمَاعِيلَ أَن طَهِّرَا بَيْتِيَ لِلطَّائِفِينَ وَالْعَاكِفِينَ وَرُكَّعِ السُّجُودِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam that they purify the house for the people who are performing tawaf around it, and the people that are performing i'tikaf, and the people that are performing prayers in the masjid. Also the hadith of the Arabi who came and the Bedouin who came and urinated in the masjid, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, إن هذه المساجد لا تصلح لشيء من هذا البول إن هذه المساجد لا تصلح لشيء من هذه البول ولا القدر. These masajid are not befitting for dirt or urine or anything, لكن they are for إنما هي لذكر الله سبحانه وتعالى والصلاة والقراءة القرآن وقراءة القرآن. Verily it's for the salah, it's for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's for reading the Quran. So if a person, that's the first place where it's haram to pray, a place which is najis. أو مغصوب, or a place which is مغصوب, stolen or robbed. A land that a person has robbed. And we said, what is the ruling on that? If a person, so to wipe that one out, if a person prays in a place which is robbed or stolen, a land which is stolen from its rightful owner, then their salah is correct, lakin they are sinning for stealing. طيب. أو في مقبرة, or in a graveyard. So it's haram to pray in a place which is najis, and also a place which is, or the graveyard. It's haram to pray in. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in authentic hadith, اجعلوا من صلاتكم في بيوتكم. Pray your salat in your houses, يعني the nawafil, the sunnah. ولا تتخذوها قبورا. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, pray your salawat in your houses, in your homes. طيب. Why? ولا تتخذوها قبورا, and do not take it as graveyards. Where is the evidence in this hadith that it's not permissible to pray in the graveyard? The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, pray some of your salat, pray your salat at home, في بيوتكم, يعني salat al-nawafil. ولا تتخذوها قبورا, and do not take it as qubur. Where's the evidence for this? For not praying in the qabr? We took a similar issue last week. What do you understand from the hadith? It's not permissible to pray in the graveyard. Mafhum al-hadith, the mafhum of the hadith is that it is not permissible to pray in the graveyard. طيب. The Messenger ﷺ also said, لا تصلوا إلى القبور ولا تجلسوا عليها. Do not pray towards the qubur, the graveyards or graves. ولا تجلسوا عليها, and do not sit on it. طيب. والأرض كلها مسجد إلا المقبرة والحمام. ده صح الحديث. The Messenger ﷺ على كل حال prohibited the believers of praying from praying in graveyards. And the reason is سد للذريعة, to prevent the ذريعة الشرك, to prevent the shirk. For verily, if people are allowed to pray in graves or in graveyards, people are allowed to pray in graveyards, soon they're going to be praying towards the grave or the person that is in the grave. So it's haram to pray in a person that, or it's haram to pray in a graveyard. Like if a person is praying Salatul Janaza on a person who is in the grave, then that is permissible. There was a woman who was at the time the Messenger ﷺ used to look after the masjid, and she died in the night. And the companions buried her in the night, and they did not want to wake up the Messenger ﷺ. And then the Messenger ﷺ said, why did you not wake me up? And he went and prayed Salatul Janaza on her in the grave. And that's different. Salatul Janaza is permissible because we have the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. طيب. أو حمام, the Shaykh says, في مكان مغصوب أو في مقبرة, the graveyard. So far we have a place which is najis and a place or maqbara, or the graveyard. أو hammam, it's also impermissible to pray in the hammam. The hammam isn't the hammam that we call today, the toilet. The toilet comes under the very first category, which is mahal najis, somewhere which is najis. Like in hammam, the closest that we have to it is Turkish baths today. It's a place where, like a big massive steam room, where people used to take baths in the past. People used to take baths in them. So people never had baths or showers in their houses. They would go to these places to wash themselves. They're called hammam, where you get a lot of people, a group of people in it, big room, steamed up like a steam room, and then they would wash themselves in it. It's impermissible to also pray in that sort of place. Why? It is similar to a place which is najis. The whole reason why a person comes to have a shower, a bath in them, is because of removing najasa from his body. طيب. So the hammam that you'll find in the books of fiqh are not the hammam or what we call hammam nowadays, the toilet. أو أعطاني إبل. The Messenger ﷺ also prohibited us from praying in the places where camels rest. The rest place for camels. The rest place for camels. The Messenger ﷺ was asked, should we pray in the rest places or in the resting places of the sheep? The Messenger ﷺ said, نعم. When the Messenger ﷺ was asked, نصلي في مبارك الإبل, should we pray in the places where the camels sit? The Messenger ﷺ said, قال لا, do not pray. طيب. The person, where it says it's not طبعا وتصح الصلاة, and salah is permissible to pray in any place except for these four: the mahal which is najis, the maqbara, the graveyard, or the hammam, or the resting place for the camels. In these four, the salah is not correct. If a person prays in them, then it's haram. Their salah is invalid. They need to repeat the salah. طيب. When we said if a person prays in a place which is robbed or stolen, stolen land. We said the salah is valid, lakin the person is sinning, sah? Why are we saying that the salah is invalid completely with these four? Put your hand up, whoever knows. La, without answering. Just put your hand up. For the land which is stolen, we said the salah is valid. The salah is valid, lakin the person is sinning. Lakin for these four places, the salah isn't valid. 1, 2, 3. طيب, from the sisters. طيب. What's the reason there?
Because we've got delete for these ones, but we don't have delete for the.
أحسنت, صح. الله يبارك فيك. أحسنت. لماذا؟ لأن in these evidences, or in these four places, we have specific evidence prohibiting us from praying in these places. The Messenger ﷺ said, when he was asked to pray in the resting places of the camels, he said, La. So there's a specific hadith from preventing us from praying in these places. Also, وَعَهِدْنَا إِلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْمَاعِيلَ أَنْ طَهِّرَ بَيْتِيَ لِلطَّائِفِينَ وَالْعَاكِفِينَ وَرُكَّعِ السُّجُودِ. Also the hadith of the Arabi. The Messenger specifically mentioned that the masjid is not a place where for najis, for things which are filthy. Lakin with the stolen land, for example, or with a person praying in gold, for a man to be praying in gold, it hasn't been specifically prohibited in the salah. Whereas these things have been prevented specifically in the salah. So the salah for the person who prays in these four places is invalid. They need to repeat their salah. طيب. وفي السنن الترمذي مرفوعا, and in the Sunan of Imam al-Tirmidhi, the Messenger ﷺ said, Al-Ardu kulluha masjidun illa al-maqbara wal-hammam. The masjid, or the earth, all of the earth is a masjid except for the maqbara, the graveyard, and the hammam. Except for the maqbara and the hammam. طيب. There's a masala I was going to go into, like we don't have time. Inshallah, maybe in next lesson. The Shaykh says, وَتَصِحُ الصَّلَاةُ فِي كُلِّ مَسْجِدٍ. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Al-Ardu kulluha masjidun. Sah? The earth, all of it is a masjid. That is a nas, or hadith, which is am. طيب. إِلَّا الْمَقْبَرَ وَالْحَمَّامِ. Except for the maqbara, the graveyard, and the hammam. That is khas. So whenever we get a am and a khas, we implement that khas in its place. For example, am, an example of am is يُوصِيكُمُ اللَّهُ فِي أَوْلَادِكُمْ لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking about inheritance, Allah mentioned that the children inherit their father. The children inherit their parents, sah? That is a hadith which is what? Am, general. The tall child, the short child, the fat child, the thin child, everyone, am. The Muslim, the kafir, every child inherits their parents. That's a nas which is am. Lakin the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in a hadith, in another hadith, لا يرث المسلم الكافر ولا الكافر المسلم. The kafir does not inherit the Muslim, and the Muslim does not inherit the kafir. طيب. How do we implement these two texts? We have a text which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that children inherit their parents, and we have a hadith which mentions, which Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the child or the Muslim cannot inherit the kafir, and the kafir cannot inherit the Muslim. There's a contradiction, sah? Sah? لا, there isn't a contradiction. This is عام and this is خاص. So sahih, the general principle is that every child inherits their parents. Lakin this nas is khas, is specific. It takes out this child who is a kafir. It takes them out of the equation. So that rule in regards to them is khas. Also, لا يرث القاتل. The Messenger ﷺ said, the qatil, or the one that kills, does not inherit. So if a person kills his father, they will not inherit them. That is khas, and that is am. Inshallah, if we do usul al-fiqh in the future, inshallah we'll talk about it more. Lakin that's the end of our lesson today. Inshallah, next lesson we'll start from sifatu as-Salah. Sifatu as-Salah.